In football, a few names feel bigger than the game itself. Joe Montana, Tom Brady. But what if history sent them down a different road? Let's flash forward to draft day. Montana wasn't supposed to be anyone's headline. Scouts had him slotted as a third or a fourth round guy, the kind of quarterback you find after the spotlights fade. But the Saints shocked everyone and took him first overall. A gamble, a statement, and just like that, New Orleans was tied to Joe Montana from the very start. Tom Brady's story flipped the other way. He was a day 3 afterthought, and sure enough, he slid to the 5th round. 16th pick. Kansas City grabbed him, but they already had Patrick Mahomes, and in the NFL, you don't keep two franchise quarterbacks in the same building. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh had a roster that looked ready to win, except at quarterback. Week 1 rolled around, and it was obvious they needed a fix. Kansas City needed a free safety. In Pittsburgh, they needed Brady. In the trade, it got done. The Chiefs sent him to the Steelers for that safety, plus a 2nd and 6th round pick. So, from the very start, everything looked different. Montana and black and gold down south. Brady in black and gold up north. Two legends dropped into new uniforms and heading straight for each other. So here we are. Year 1, 2 rookies, 2 different stadiums, both starting their careers under the brightest lights they've ever seen. In Pittsburgh, Tom Brady made his first start at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A rookie in black and gold, and a crowd restless for a quarterback they could believe in. The moment he stepped under center, the weight of the trade was right there on his shoulders. Down south, it was Joe Montana's turn. New Orleans opened against the Carolina Panthers, and the Superdome buzzed with curiosity more than expectation. This was the guy scouts said was a 3rd or a 4th rounder, and the Saints had just spent the 1st overall pick on him. Every throw was going to be judged, every mistake magnified. 2 different cities, 2 different debuts, and the start of 2 very different journeys, both already tied together. Carolina opened the game, but their first drive stalled out quick with a punt, and then it happened. Joe Montana walked onto the field for his very first NFL snap. First play, first throw, a completion. Nothing spectacular, but the ball was out and it was caught, and the kid had officially arrived. But the drive went nowhere. History tends to start small. Fast forward late into the 4th quarter, Saints and Panthers are deadlocked at 24 each. The Superdome is buzzing. 2.5 minutes left. Ball at their own 25, 1st and 10. Montana drops back, fires across the middle to Brandon Cooks. Big gain. All the way to the Carolina 40. Suddenly, the Saints are moving, and the crowd is alive, and the rookie looks like he might just finish his debut with a storybook drive. But the Panthers held. The 2-minute warning came and went, and every down got tougher. 4th and 10, the drive stalls. The punt sails away. Bryce Young takes over for Carolina and coolly marches them into field goal range with just 14 seconds left. The kick goes through, 27-24 Panthers. Montana had one last chance. Desperate seconds on the clock, he forced a throw, and it ended the way so many rookie debuts do, with a pick. Bryce Young knelt it out. Game over. The line for Montana, 222 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Not a win, not a disaster, just the beginning. Pittsburgh's season opened under a blanket of fog and rain. The kind of night where football felt heavy and the crowd's breath hung in the air. It was Tom Brady's first NFL start. A 5th round pick, traded into black and gold, now asked to carry a franchise that needed an answer under center. For most of the game, it was a grind. Field goals traded, drive stalled, By the time the 2-minute warning hit in the fourth quarter, Tampa Bay held a 10-6 lead, and the rookie had one timeout. From his own 29, Brady nearly went down, swallowed in the pocket, but spun out and rifled a throw downfield, caught at the Buccaneers' 37-yard line. The stadium roared. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe the kid was about to steal it. But the next snap told a different story. Levante David broke through, sacking Brady and pushing Pittsburgh back. The clock bled. 2nd and 17. Then, an incompletion. 3rd and long. Chaos. And then an injury stopped the clock. The Steelers burning their final timeout. And then, it all came down to 4th and 7. One play to keep the drive alive. Brady stepped in, fired a dart. Too high. Overthrown. Turnover on downs. Ball game. Tampa Bay wins it. 10-6. Brady's line, 144 yards. No touchdowns. 45% completion percentage. On paper, nothing to celebrate. But for a rain-soaked crowd in Pittsburgh, it was their first real glimpse at a rookie who was not afraid to try. By the end of the year, both rookies had put up numbers that looked promising, but not enough to move the needle. Montana's Saints clawed their way to a 9-8 record. Competitive, respectable, but they missed the playoffs by a game. Close, but not quite there. Brady's Steelers fought all season. Flashes of something real under center, but the holes were too deep through the roster. They finished at 7-10. On the outside, looking in. 2 rookie quarterbacks, 2 new franchises. Both showing just enough to keep hope alive, but not nearly enough to change their destinies. Not yet. Year 2 brought more of the same. Tom Brady looked sharper on paper, over 3,700 yards and 24 touchdowns. But the Steelers stumbled to a 5-12 finish. The numbers said progress, but the record said otherwise. Joe Montana kept it clean in New Orleans, nearly 3,000 yards, 19 touchdowns to just 2 picks. But the Saints could only manage a 6-11 season. Both quarterbacks finishing year 2 with respectable stats, but neither anywhere near the postseason. The waiting continued. Year 3 brought no relief. In New Orleans, the bottom fell out. Montana's Saints crashed to 3-14, the worst record in football. Every yard he threw seemed wasted on a roster that could hold water. Pittsburgh was a little bit better. Brady steering the Steelers to a 8-9 record, but once again, no playoffs. A step forward on the surface, still nowhere near where he needed to be. 3 years in, both quarterbacks have proven they can play, but neither had proven they can win. And in the NFL, that's the only thing that matters. Year 4 gave us the first real signs of life. In Pittsburgh, Tom Brady finally pushed the Steelers into the win column, finishing at 10-7. Still not enough to crack the postseason, but finally a winning record. Proof the trade might actually have paid off. Down in New Orleans, Montana's struggles dragged on. The Saints limped to a 7-10 season. Another losing year, another wasted season. 4 years in, the gap was starting to show. Brady had momentum. Montana was still kind of searching for it. Year 5 gave us history. Both quarterbacks dropped their openers. And then, in week 2, for the first time in their careers, Tom Brady and Joe Montana lined up across from one another. Steelers, Saints, black and gold against black and gold. And for most of the afternoon, it was Brady's game. The Steelers moved the ball, controlling the tempo. Brady finished with 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, steady as ever in the pocket. It felt like Pittsburgh had it locked in. But the fourth quarter belonged to Montana. The Saints offense, quiet for 3 quarters, suddenly caught fire. He picked his spots, marched his team down the field, and with 1 second left, ball on the 8, no timeouts, Montana found no one open. He saw a crease in the lane, tucked it, and ran straight through, across the goal line, as the clock hit 0. Ball game. Saints, 29, Steelers, 28. Montana outdueled Brady in the only way he could, with sheer desperation, capped off by a scramble nobody saw coming. The stat line told one story. Brady, 317 yards and 2 scores. Montana, 261 yards, 1 touchdown, but the scoreboard told the only one that mattered. Their first meeting went to Montana. The season itself, though, told a harsher truth. Pittsburgh stumbled 2-7-10. New Orleans sank even lower at 6-11. Brady's numbers look sharp. 3,195 yards, 28 touchdowns and 9 picks. Montana's were cleaner but quieter. Just over 3,100 yards, 17 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Both men had their flashes. Both proved they belong. But after 5 years, neither had broken through to January. The rivalry was alive, but it still lived in the shadows for now. Year 6 was more of the same. In New Orleans, the bottom dropped out. The Saints finished 3-14, dead last in the league, wasting another year of Joe Montana under center. Pittsburgh was not much better. Brady and the Steelers ended at 6-11. Flashes of competence drowned by the inconsistency and missed chances throughout the season. Neither quarterback fell apart though. Their play was pretty steady and reliable, but team success kept slipping through their fingers. 6 years in, both Brady and Montana were still watching the postseason from home. By year 7, the rivalry was still searching for weight. Both quarterbacks had talent, both had flashes, but the wins never seemed to follow. Week 12 in Pittsburgh gave them another chance. Brady at 6-4, pushing toward the playoffs. Montana dragging a 3-7 Saints team trying to salvage pride. For 3 quarters, it was tight. A back and forth, low scoring grind, both defenses bending but not breaking. Every possession felt like it was a fist fight in the trenches, neither side able to take control. Then, the fourth quarter came, and Joe Montana once again took over. The Saints offense, quiet most of the day, suddenly lit up. Montana found rhythm, strung together drives, and with under a minute to play, New Orleans had built a 10-point cushion. Brady tried to answer, down late. He pushed the Steelers into hurry-up mode, chasing a comeback, but the clock was not on his side, and the rally fizzled out, and the game ended 24-14. The stat line, though, told a story of efficiency and not dominance. Montana, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Brady, 248 yards and 2 touchdowns of his own. Both steady, both smart, but when it mattered, Montana's team finished and Brady's didn't. 2 meetings, 2 wins for Montana. The rematch in Pittsburgh had gone Montana's way, and the season as a whole told a very familiar story. New Orleans staggered to 6-11. Another year wasted for Montana despite flashes of brilliance. Pittsburgh, behind Brady, fought to 9-8, a winning season, but still not enough in a crowded AFC. The Steelers once again came up short of the playoffs. 7 years in, the rivalry belonged to Montana head-to-head, but Brady's steady climb suggested momentum. The question wasn't whether they could play, it was whether their teams would ever give them the stage they deserved. 8 long years. That's how long it took Tom Brady to reach this moment. 8 years of climbing out of mediocrity, carrying Pittsburgh through false starts, near misses, and wasted seasons. 8 years of waiting for the postseason lights to finally shine on him. The numbers said he deserved it. Nearly 30,000 yards and close to 200 touchdowns and a completion percentage north of 77%. But numbers don't get you to January. Winning does. And for the first time in his career, Brady had dragged the Steelers to 11 victories and into the playoffs. Across from him stood the Cleveland Browns, a division rival, built on grit defense and a chip on their shoulder the size of Lake Erie. For Cleveland, this was just another chance to spoil Pittsburgh's party. For Brady, it was everything. There's no next year guarantee in the NFL. No promise that this chance comes around again. For Brady, this was history's first look at what he can do when the games mattered the most. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, the lights of January, and Tom Brady, finally on the playoff stage. And just like that, 8 years of waiting, of building, and fighting for this chance ended in a nightmare. The Browns came into Pittsburgh and took the fight to them. Sharif Price lit up the scoreboard with 4 touchdown passes, shredding the Steelers' defense. Every time Brady and the offense showed a spark, Cleveland had an answer. Brady's stat line looked serviceable. 249 yards, a touchdown, completing over 64% of his passes. But this game was not about statistics, it was about control. And from the opening whistle, Cleveland had it. The scoreboard told a story. The Browns, 31, and the Steelers, 13. A blowout. Reminder that just making it to the postseason isn't enough. For Brady, it was his first taste of playoff football. And it tasted bitter. 8 years to get here. 60 painful minutes to be sent home. The question now wasn't whether he could reach the playoffs. The question was whether he could ever win once he got there. Eight years gone, and the questions haven't changed. Brady finally reached the postseason, only to be humiliated. Montana kept throwing, kept fighting, but his Saints spiraled into irrelevance. Now, year 9 begins, and both legacies hang in the balance. The Steelers are built to contend, a stacked roster ready to ease the sting of last January. The Saints, they're battered, inconsistent, but still driven by Montana's arm. And fate has written them back together. Week 18, New Orleans versus Pittsburgh. Win, and the road to the playoffs stays alive. Lose, and another year of pain is carved into the record. 2 quarterbacks, 2 teams. One more chapter in a rivalry that refuses to fade. Week 18 now. Saints and Steelers. Montana versus Brady with the postseason hanging in balance. For 3 quarters, it was all Pittsburgh. Brady had already coughed the ball up twice, but even with those mistakes, the Steelers still held a 17-3 lead with 10 minutes left. It felt like the game was under control, but then Montana answered. He broke free for a 20-yard run, lowering his shoulder for the first down, and on the very next series, he found the end zone through the air. Extra point good, and just like that, it was 17-10. The Superdome came alive. Maybe the Saints had one more miracle left in them, and that's when Brady did what he's built for. He marches offense 73 yards in a drive that chewed up over 4 minutes. Short throws, smart reads, grinding down the Saints defense till they broke. Touchdown. Steelers up 24-10 with 3 minutes and 51 seconds left. Montana tried to rally. On 4th and inches, the Saints handed it off and were stopped short, turning the ball over. Even after that, he refused to go quietly, stringing together a few late completions, but the clock was the one thing he couldn't beat. The stage is Los Angeles. The lights of the postseason are here again. And Tom Brady walks into them carrying more questions than answers. Last year, he fought for 8 long seasons to finally reach the playoffs, only to be blown out in his very first game. A nightmare, a humiliation. Tonight, the only question is whether he can stand back up from it. The Steelers arrived battered, but not broken. A 9-7 record was enough to slip them into January football. And for Brady, that's all the opening he needed. He threw for over 4,000 yards this season, 34 touchdowns, the numbers of the star. But statistics do not matter here. In the playoffs, only wins survive the test of time. Across the field stand the Los Angeles Chargers, led by Justin Herbert, one of the league's most talented arms, with a receiving corps that can stretch defenses to the breaking point. They have the home field, they have weapons, and they know what Brady's Steelers look like when the pressure tightens. Vulnerable. So here it is. Brady, in his second career playoff game against the rising AFC power, he's not just playing for Pittsburgh, he's playing for his legacy. Last year ended in disaster. This year, he has a chance at redemption, or the weight of failure will grow even heavier. By the start of the fourth quarter, Los Angeles already had its grip on the game, leading 24-10. Brady did what he could, mounting 2 touchdown drives, refusing to let Pittsburgh go quietly. But every time the Steelers struck, Justin Herbert struck back. The Chargers answered blow for blow. They bled the final minutes off the clock, shutting the door on Pittsburgh's hopes. The scoreboard told the story. 34-24. Chargers advance. Steelers sent home. Both quarterbacks threw 3 touchdowns. Brady finishing with 289 yards, completing just under 78% of his passes. Solid, but not flawless. Herbert, though, Herbert was near perfect. 331 yards, 3 scores, and an astonishing 93.9% completion rate. The difference was clearly efficiency. Brady fought, but Herbert never blinked. And once again, Tom Brady's postseason story ends before it can truly begin. 10 years, a decade of questions, of comparisons, of what-ifs, and now, for the first time in years, both Tom Brady and Joe Montana are here, in the same postseason bracket, with each something to prove. The Steelers fought and clawed their way to a 9-8 finish. Brady threw for nearly 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and at age 30, he still looks every bit the franchise quarterback. But Pittsburgh's road is unforgiving. A 6th seed, matched against a tough Texans squad in the wild card. Meanwhile, in New Orleans, Joe Montana steadied a turbulent Saints season. His numbers weren't as flashy, just over 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, but his efficiency spoke volumes. A 73% completion rate built on precision and trust, especially with star wideout A.J. Klein. And it earned the Saints a 7th seed and a ticket to the dance. The story, though, writes itself. Brady, desperate to turn playoff appearances into playoff wins. Montana, carrying a team that hasn't been able to break through, staring down another chance to silence the doubt. And fittingly, the first step of year 10's postseason begins in New Orleans. The Saints host the Falcons. Montana against a division rival in a must-win moment. The question isn't just who survives today. It's who lasts longest in this bracket. Brady or Montana. Because after 10 long years, the real test starts now. The game was tied at 21, the clock bleeding away, and every snap felt like a season hanging in the balance. Atlanta had their chance first, pushing the ball across midfield with just over 2 minutes left, but a deep shot fell incomplete, and on fourth down, the Falcons punted it away, leaving the Saints one more shot, 92 yards away from the end zone. With just 1:44 to play, Montana took the field and he went to work. First a scramble, breaking free from his own 28, all the way to midfield. The crowd roared as the Saints hurried to the line. A short pass here, a check down there, and suddenly they were at the Falcons' 32. 27 seconds left, no timeouts. Montana dropped back and delivered one more strike, setting up the kick team at the 24. The clock ticked. The stadium held its breath. The snap, the hold, the kick, the final seconds disappeared. The ball sailed through the uprights. Final score, Saints 24, Falcons 21. For Joe Montana, it was his first playoff win. A drive in the final 2 minutes that put New Orleans into the divisional round and kept his career alive on the biggest stage yet. For 3 quarters, it was everything you'd want in a playoff game. A back and forth shootout. Brady and the Steelers trading blows with Houston. The scoreline, never more than a possession apart. But in the fourth, everything changed on a single play. It wasn't Brady who cracked. It was his backfield. A fumble at the Pittsburgh 35 handed the Texans a short field, and they did not waste it. The lead jumped from 1 score to 2. Brady fought to drag the Steelers back, even closing the gap late, but the clock was not his friend. Final, Texans 38, Steelers 31. Brady threw well enough to win, but in the playoffs, one mistake is all it takes. And this time, it wasn't even his. The Superdome had been rocking all week, but when kickoff came, it was the Packers who stole the noise. From the very first series, Green Bay took control, pounding the Saints' defense, picking apart the secondary, and never letting Montana find rhythm. Every Saints drive felt like a struggle. Every Packers possession felt like a statement. By halftime, the crowd was restless. By the fourth quarter, they were silent. A 30-15 final. And the truth was even harsher than the score. New Orleans wasn't outdueled. They were outclassed. Montana's season ends on his own turf, watching the Packers celebrate on the Superdome floor. Ten years had already set the tone for this rivalry. Brady with the bigger totals, Montana with the sharper edge. Coming into year 11, Brady's career line stood at 37,560 yards, 258 touchdowns to 58 interceptions, and a 102.8 passer rating. Montana's total were smaller, but no less impressive. 29,867 yards, 207 touchdowns, 50 interceptions, and a 105.2 quarterback rating. Both quarterbacks carried resumes worthy of Canton, but neither had delivered that defining January run. In year 11, the regular season belonged to Miami in the AFC, finishing at 13-4, and to Detroit in the NFC, who seized the number 1 seed at 10-7. Their leap to the top came in Week 18, the Lions winning while the Packers stumbled. One result pushed Detroit to the summit. The other dropped Green Bay all the way to the 5th seed. It was a snapshot of how tight the NFC race had been all year. Meanwhile, both Brady and Montana steered their teams back into the postseason. Brady threw for 4,087 yards, 28 touchdowns, and incredibly through the whole year, not a single interception. And he was good for a 111.2 passer rating and 8th in the MVP race. Montana answered with one of the most efficient seasons of his career. 3,161 yards, 23 touchdowns, and just a single interception. 72% completion percentage, and a staggering 120.4 quarterback rating, placing 10th in the MVP voting and locking up the NFC South crown. So, when the dust settled, New Orleans entered as the number 2 seed in the NFC, division champs at 10-7. Pittsburgh, edged out of the AFC North by Cincinnati, landed as the 6th seed at 10-7. 2 quarterbacks, 2 paths, converging again in January. Wildcard weekend was waiting. The road to the Super Bowl began in Cincinnati, and for Tom Brady and the Steelers, it meant staring down a bitter division rival. Pittsburgh had scratched their way to 10-7, just good enough to earn the 6th seed, and Brady had put together one of the cleanest seasons of his career, over 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, not a single interception, and a 111.2 quarterback rating. He came to the playoffs playing flawless football, but now the stage was bigger and the pressure was heavier. Across the field stood the Bengals, led by MVP winner Jimmy Jackson, a quarterback who had turned Cincinnati into the class of the AFC North. The Bengals, they were younger and faster and deeper, and they had already beaten Pittsburgh twice in the regular season. This third meeting was more than a playoff game. It was survival. For much of the night, though, Cincinnati kept the upper hand. Jackson had the Bengals in control, and by the 2-minute warning, they clung to a 21-14 lead. The Steelers' defense forced a late stop, and suddenly, the ball was in Brady's hands with 26 seconds left, no timeouts, and the entire field in front of him. 84 yards of desperation, but the magic never came. Questionable play calling and brutal clock management bled away the seconds. Short throws to the middle of the field, a run when they needed air. The game ended not with a bang, but with Brady jogging off. The scoreboard locked at 21-14. Brady's line looked efficient. 84 yards in that final drive attempt. Accurate as ever. But efficiency without urgency means nothing. Jimmy Jackson and the Bengals advanced. Brady and the Steelers, they went home. Now for Wild Card Game 2, the Washington Commanders versus the New Orleans Saints. The Superdome was alive for playoff football. New Orleans hosting Washington in the Wild Card round. Joe Montana entered with one of the most efficient seasons of his career. Over 72% completions, 23 touchdowns, just in a single interception. And the Saints carried the weight of expectation as the NFC's number 2 seed. For most of the afternoon, it was tight. Washington's defense forced mistakes, Montana throwing a rare interception, and Jaden Daniels kept the Commanders close. By the final minutes, the Saints led only 21-18, clinging to a one-score game with time running short. Then came the moment. 3rd and 11 from his own 39, 2 minutes left, and Montana dropped back. He let it fly downfield to A.J. Klein. The ball cutting through the air like a dagger. In the end, touchdown. Saints by 10, and the Superdome is now erupting. Afterwards, Jaden Daniels showed he had a heart, leading Washington back downfield and driving into the end zone himself with just over a minute to play, trimming it to 28-25. But afterwards, the onside kick failed, and with the ball back near midfield, New Orleans drained the clock. Final score, New Orleans Saints 28, Washington Commanders 25. Montana finished with 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and the Saints moved on to the divisional round. Washington went home. And the legend of Joe Montana in January finally had another chapter. Now we give you guys the Wild Card Weekend recap, and it definitely delivered drama. In New Orleans, Joe Montana reminded the league why he still belongs in January. 327 yards, 3 touchdowns, and carrying the Saints past Washington 28-25. Jaden Daniels fought hard, but with just under 200 yards and a single score, he couldn't match Montana's fire. Out in the AFC, the Indianapolis Colts steamrolled Las Vegas, pounding the Raiders 28-18 in a game that never felt close. Over in Green Bay, Drake May outdueled Brock Purdy. He was definitely efficient as the Packers handled San Francisco 24-13 to advance. The wild card haze has lifted, and now the stage sharpens. The divisional round. New Orleans, fresh off a tight 28-25 win over Washington, holds their ground at home. Joe Montana was surgical in that victory, 327 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the poise of a man who knows January belongs to legends. But now the challenge rises. Across from him, the New York Giants. Their defense has been disruptive all year, ranked 9 in points allowed, with their strong safety Parsons patrolling the secondary, capable of flipping momentum with a single read and break on the ball. Their offense, powered by Paxton, has proven it can stretch the field and hit the Saints where it hurts, through the air. The Saints remain one of the NFL's most balanced rosters though. 2nd in rushing yards, 3rd in defensive pass yards allowed, 2nd in defensive points allowed. But this is no tune-up. This is a clash between Montana's precision and the Giants' opportunism. The bracket tells a story though. The Lions and Dolphins wait as top seeds, but the path forward runs through nights like these. One mistake, one play can swing the balance. The lights in the Superdome though, they burn very bright. The Saints are 2 wins away from the Super Bowl. The Giants are here to spoil it. The wildcard haze has been lifted though, and now the divisional spotlight fell on New Orleans. Joe Montana and the Saints were back under the lights of the Superdome, 1 step away from the NFC Championship. Across the field stood the Giants, a team built on balance with Paxton stretching the defenses and Parsons anchoring a defense among the league's best. It was precision versus pressure, efficiency versus grit, and only one side would survive. From the opening whistle, the game was a grind. By halftime, the Saints led 14-9, Montana finding just enough rhythm to keep New Orleans in front. The Giants clawed back though, cutting the lead to 2, and midway through the 4th, the scoreboard read 20-18. Saints clinging to a slim margin. Then came the play that shifted everything. With just over 5 minutes, the Giants had marched across field, threatening at the Saints 32. The quarterback dropped back, fired, and threw it straight into the arms of a waiting defender. Interception. 90 yards of daylight. Pick 6, and the Superdome erupted as New Orleans stretched the lead to 27-18. But the Giants would not die quietly. From their own 13, they pieced together one last desperate drive, and just before the 2-minute warning, they found the end zone. Touchdown. The PAT made it 27-25. The crowd tightening with every breath. And then Joe Montana did what legends do. 2 minutes on the clock. All 3 Giants timeouts waiting, and he never gave them the ball back. Smart throws, steady runs, ice in his veins. The clock just bled away. The timeouts vanished, and when the final whistle sounded, the Saints had survived. Final score, 27-25, New Orleans marches on to the NFC Championship, and Joe Montana's postseason dream stays alive. The Superdome was shaking. The Saints 1-1 away from the Super Bowl. Joe Montana standing against Green Bay's rising star, Drake May. From the start, it was a slugfest. Defense dictated every yard. By the fourth quarter, the Saints led 13-10, and when May drove into field goal range, the kick tied it at 13 apiece. Montana responded, pushing New Orleans into Packers territory. But on 4th and 2 at the 45, the Saints ran straight into a wall. Stuffed, and it was a turnover on downs. And Drake May seized the moment. With just over 3 minutes left, he carved up the field, draining the Saints' timeouts before finding the end zone from the 14 on 3rd and long. Touchdown. Green Bay. 20-13. Just 1 minute and 16 seconds left. Superdome went quiet. But Joe Montana, he was not finished. From his own 28, he hit strike after strike, hurrying his men to the line, spiking the ball to stop the clock, down to the Packers' 29. Out of timeouts, 36 seconds left. He threw over the middle again, hurried them forward. 23 seconds, 3rd and 5. One more shot. Montana dropped back, saw his tight end, and fired. Touchdown Saints. Tied game. 19 seconds left. 20-20. The dome erupted for the second straight week. New Orleans had this time, though, forced overtime. Although the Packers won the toss, the Saints defense forced a punt. Montana had the ball, a chance to write history, but it wasn't to be. His drive stalled at midfield, 4th and 3, and ended in a punt. Green Bay took over at midfield, facing their own 4th down. They fake punted. A direct snap to the back, untouched until the 25. A trick play at the biggest moment. From there, it was inevitable. Packers lined up, kicked, and split the uprights. Final score, 23-20. The Green Bay Packers to the Super Bowl. The Saints' run ends in heartbreak. A classic in the Superdome, slipping away in overtime. The season, though, it ended in chaos. Not in New Orleans or Pittsburgh, though, but on the game's biggest stage. The Green Bay Packers and the Cleveland Browns fought to a 23-23 tie in the Super Bowl. 2 seconds left. The Browns pinned on their own 35. Sharif Price, Cleveland's rising star, dropped back and heaved a prayer, a desperate Hail Mary arching towards the end zone for a heartbeat. It looked like nothing. Bodies tangled, arms reaching, the ball drifting down into a sea of helmets. And then it was caught. Touchdown. Cleveland walked it off. The Browns stunned the world, winning 29-23. Their first Super Bowl delivered on the unlikeliest play of all time, a miracle throw from their own 35. For Green Bay, just like they had delivered to the Saints a couple weeks before, it was heartbreak. But for Cleveland, it's history. In year 12, the season came and went without fireworks for Pittsburgh. The Steelers finished 10-7, but they were outside of the playoff bracket. In New Orleans, Montana carried the Saints to a 13-4 record and another division crown, only to see it all collapse in the wild card round. The Saints fell 27-24 at home to the Atlanta Falcons. Despite throwing for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns, it was another season. Another heartbreak. The season began with rain and fog in Pittsburgh. In Week 5, the Saints and Steelers met at Heinz Field. Montana and Brady face to face once again. The conditions were clearly miserable, but the outcome was clear. Brady and the Steelers rolled 27-10, while Montana and the Saints shrugged off, held to just 10 points. It was another reminder that even in year 13, these two careers had given as much mediocrity as magic. But slowly, the tide began to turn by year's end. Dallas sat atop the NFL at 13-4, but both New Orleans and Pittsburgh had carved their own playoff paths. The Saints finished 11-6. Montana, very steady still, throwing for 3,208 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. His precision still intact with a 108.6 passer rating. The Steelers, though, stood taller at 12-5, behind Brady's finest campaign yet. 4,072 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions, and a staggering 119.1 quarterback rating. For so long, January had been a graveyard for both, heartbreak after heartbreak. But this time, the simulations of mediocrity gave way to destiny. The bracket shifted, and as the weeks passed, the Saints and Steelers kept surviving, until finally, it was written. Super Bowl Sunday. Joe Montana versus Tom Brady. The rosters told the story of two different philosophies. New Orleans was built on balance. Montana's leadership supported by a strong tight end, reliable wideouts, a punishing line, defensive backs who could turn games, and a ground game that kept the chains moving. The Steelers were built around peaks. Brady at the center of it all, with one of the league's best halfbacks, a dominant wide receiver, and a secondary stacked with young playmakers. Their offensive line, though, was talented, but unproven. Younger in spots than New Orleans, a gamble that had yet to be punished. And so, after 13 years of waiting, of disappointment, of almost, the stage was finally set. The New Orleans Saints, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Joe Montana, Tom Brady. Two careers colliding on football's biggest stage. Under a clear night sky in Tampa Bay, the crowd roared as two legends finally met on the sport's biggest stage. Joe Montana took the opening kickoff and wasted no time. A crisp march downfield, finishing with a strike to Jahil Robinson from the 20-yard line. 7-0 Saints. Tom Brady answered like a man who'd waited 13 seasons for this. Precision throws to his tight end and number one wideout Jared Drew moved the chains. A punishing ground game carried Pittsburgh to the doorstep, and on 4th and goal, Brady found Drew again. Touchdown. Tie game. But the celebration lasted seconds. Byron Leach, number 37, fielded the ensuing kickoff and slashed straight through the Steelers' coverage for a breathtaking return score. In a flash, it was 14-7 New Orleans. Tampa Bay was going crazy. Then, the first quarter closed with Brady driving again, only to be sacked at the 34. Pittsburgh settled for a field goal early in the second. Montana responded with a bruising ground attack, his back bouncing outside from the 17 for a 21-10 lead. But Brady's composure held. Another methodical series set up a second field goal, trimming it to 21-13 at halftime. Although the third quarter belonged to Pittsburgh, Brady orchestrated an opening march that ended in the end zone, slicing the deficit to a single point. By the start of the fourth, the Steelers led 28-21 and were back in Saints territory. A short field goal pushed it to 31-21, but Montana, ever the fighter, answered with a 12-play, 76-yard masterpiece. He scrambled to the 2 before being rocked on a hit that sent him into concussion protocol. Backup Chuck Curran entered cold and drove across the goal line. 31-28 with 8 minutes and 46 seconds to play. From there, the tension only climbed. Brady faced relentless pressure, the Saints notching their 5th sack and punted. Montana returned, fizzled with a throw harmlessly into the Steelers' sideline. Pittsburgh, though, they seized the moment. Herbie Pryor, their powerhouse back, ground the clock, and the Saints' timeouts, capping a brutal drive with a 1-yard plunge, and the extra point ended up being good, 38-28 with less than 2 minutes left. With Montana sidelined, New Orleans turned to desperation. Curran scrambled for chunks of yardage, but needed 2 scores and had no timeouts. The final minute dissolved in chaos. When Brady knelt to drain the last seconds, the debate was over for now. Tom Brady had his first Super Bowl ring, a 38-28 victory over Joe Montana, the big dog of New Orleans. One night, one championship, but not the end. These quarterbacks have traded blows for more than a decade, and this first Super Bowl clash is only the beginning. There will be more winners, more stadiums, more nights when Brady and Montana meet again with everything on the line.